Welcome to everybody who's joined the webinar. As Ben said, I've been a member of the Food and Drink Industries Committee for some time, and I've been fortunate to be the chair of the judging panel for about 10 years now. And I say fortunate because in that time, we've seen a number of very interesting examples of good ideas and good practice that have really made a big difference in the workplaces where they've been introduced over the years. And we're always very keen to find ways of trying to share some of those examples. So we always make sure that the winner and two runners-up get a chance to share their activities at the annual Food and Drink Conference, which I'll tell you more about later. But we also are using this webinar for two reasons, really. One is to promote this year's awards and to encourage entries to this year's awards, but also to share some good practice from entries to last year's awards as well. So in a minute, I'm going to hand you over to Alison Wright and Richard Gould from Kettleby Foods, which is part of Samworth Brothers. They were one of the entries that didn't actually make it to the top 3 last year, but nevertheless were a very strong entry and have some very interesting ideas to talk about when it comes to managing health and safety for the hygiene team in their workplace. So we'll have a presentation from Alison and Richard about that first, followed, as Ben said, by some question and answer. And Ben will hear from Esther Fernandez-Guia at AB Sugar in Spain. AB Sugar in Spain were the winners of last year's awards, and they had a cracking entry, which was all about how to actually measure safety in a positive way rather than just measuring the absence of accidents. And after we've had a question and answer session with Esther, I shall then spend 10-15 minutes with you just explaining how to enter for this year's awards and why it's worth thinking about entering for this year's awards, and then we'll wrap it up. So that's roughly the programme that we've got planned for today. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to Alison and Richard at Kettleby Foods to talk about their entry for last year's awards. Alison and Richard, over to you.
Okay, thanks very much. Hello, everybody. So we're going to talk about the Kettleby Foods hygiene safety management system. So, as I say, we'll talk you through the challenges that were identified within the hygiene team at Kettleby and the solution that was put in place to tackle the issues. As you're aware, hygiene teams within food manufacture undertake a diverse range of activities and at varying levels of risk. And that was true of the team at Kettleby. They had agency workers within their team with limited English speaking and written skills. They had a large number of procedures and risk assessments, but there was no real structure around them or visibility for the operatives. And also they've got cleaning schedules in place for every aspect, but they've not always been aligned with periods of lowest risk. So should certain of the tasks be done in daylight, should certain of the tasks be done in shutdowns. So it was felt that more could be done within the team to bring everything together, and in the process get the whole team involved and get them engaged so that they actually supported the ownership of the system. So I'm going to hand over to Richard now, who was pivotal in actually implementing the system and bringing it all together, and he will take you through the actual solution that was put in place.
Hello everybody. Okay, so although as management we identify and implement controls, what we often find it's challenging to engage your supervisors and your staff, as health and safety seem to sort of like run parallel to tasks and operations. You tend to get risk assessments carried out once a year and maybe disappear into folders somewhere, and people don't really challenge and discuss the elements of those tasks. On this site, we've had what's a hygiene management system, which is a one-click portal to all the dozens of files and hundreds of folders within hygiene. And what I've done with this is I've actually embedded the health and safety element into this. As you can see on the right-hand side there, you've actually got the health and safety section. It talks about managing health and safety, the highest risk with IOSH. We've got its own action tracker, auditing and monitoring, and even a guidance for action and investigation. Part of the organisational structure will then also show to the supervisors how health and safety is essentially embedded into the process and not a separate part of it, going from the organisation through the enabling procedures to the actual cleaning instruction cards and general cleaning and tasks, the validation, which is important for food industry, the documentation, which is important for food industry, but then you see health and safety comes in all of its aspects as part of the process and includes the training and the training records with reviews. We have within the managing of health and safety, got the quick access to different procedures which actually involve health and safety and are alluded to. So the hygiene training talks about health and safety more now. Cost assessments being high risk with chemicals, it's included in there, safe systems and work. And the actual risk assessment itself, a bit of an explanation around it with a fixed procedure there. It sort of defines the steps that should be considered for risks in accounting departments to the supervisors who haven't all been given the risk assessment training or any evidence that's needed for this. At the bottom of this procedure, again, we've looked at the different tasks within hygiene, and so they come under categories of the chemical, mechanical, work at height, etc. And it shows us step by step from left to right for the supervisor to understand the things they should be considering. So at the top you can see the chemical, you need to have a safe systems of work, you need to assess the chemicals, you need to have training for both the handling, storage and transportation with the checks to ensure it works, the PPE selection and PPE selection. Work at height, you look at the second part of that page there, you look at safe systems of work and training for mute work and for ladders and steps and any equipment which has its own platforms. But again, on the right of that, it shows you the big red square there. The auditing and monitoring has to be carried out on a regular basis, so we ensure compliance, but also to help identify the gaps. Going back into the sub-menu, you can access the risk assessments defined there, which is the general assessments, manual handling and work at height. And initially you go to the dashboard for the general risk assessments. You can see there straight away the risk ratings that we're sitting at red, amber and green. We have summary pages and indexes. But then the risk assessment format we followed is something that was introduced for some time ago, which simplified risk assessments, breaking it down into the relevant areas of workplace, equipment, physical, hazardous substances, process and work organisation. And as you follow down on the left-hand side, it actually has specific questions about the particular hazards, so slips and trips, heating and ventilation, and it's purely yes or no entered in the boxes. If it turns green, you don't have to do anything else for that particular part. If it turns red, you go to the next column, asking what the hazard is, you describe the hazard, and below that the potential injury. The next column is how people could be exposed to the hazards. Again, it's a yes or a no. And then the right-hand one, the existing control measures, hopefully will go green. If any improvements are needed, they'll be entered in on the right-hand side, and then you've got your 1, 2, 3 red, amber, green rating. Now that's for the general risk assessment. We also identify throughout that assessment if something has a work at height risk. Although it seems just one section there is quite simple, that actually prompts you to carry out a separate work at height assessment with more specific questions relating to work at height. And the same goes for the manual handling. Because we have supervisors who haven't all actually had risk assessment training, it's always challenging for them to actually think on the toes as to what kind of risks they're looking for. So on each of these assessments at the bottom, you've got prompts for the primary hazards, the potential causes and the potential injury and severity. And below this on this one, there's also guidance if you get a red rating or a green rating, amber rating, as to steps to take again. It's also identified that with hundreds of procedures, there's some common risks in there, which if you try to put them in all the procedures, you're talking about 15, 20 pages, and the staff aren't always going to pick up on that. So we took a lot of these, which are called generic, and have general inclusions. So as you can see there, the manual handling techniques, general movement hazards specific to hygiene, such as carrying heavier loads, as automatic trolleys should be used where provided, 2 people operations for carrying pipework around. So they're all standard kind of things, technical protocols, accident procedure, fire procedure, and working on ladders. So that is a separate document that all the staff go through, as well as all their cleaning instruction cards. In the risk assessment section, you've also got your procedures listed with the procedure reference on the left, but also the manual the risk assessment button on the right. You can go from that straight to a cleaning procedure. The cleaning procedures, you can see, are quite detailed. But again, within that, you'll see there at the top, there's risk assessment reference number and manual handling and work at height. They are hyperlinked. So you can fly between the risk assessments and the procedures and correlate all the risks that you've got there, re-evaluate each year by looking at the procedure and maybe find any changes. The operatives can find changes and actually recommend. On there, you'll see chemicals as a higher risk as well. Again, the hyperlink straight away to the site risk assessment for the chemicals. And in there, you can go straight to the actual safety data sheet that's included in the process as well. As I said before, auditing and monitoring is obviously very important to this to ensure that everything is key and sorted out. And with that one, we actually have conversations with the operatives and the team leaders, and they have to sign to say that they've actually recognised what the issue has been found, or whether the operatives have identified something they can tell the team leaders about. These are used for both a positive and a negative, so we have actually made improvements, but on the back of these, we've also had to carry out formal action in the past against operatives who have failed to carry out these duties. And then on to the accident and incident. There's guidance on there. So a lot of the time, especially on night hygiene, they maybe not have got all the full support around and about. So there is guidance through there, how to carry out an accident investigation. You've got your decision sheet going on there. You've got links to email addresses to send out automatically, asking all the specific questions. So when the management come in the morning, all the answers are there ready for them. There's a lot more to go through on this. It's very difficult to show it all on slideshows, and it's taken quite a long time to put together, but all the supervisors are on board with this, and I'm gradually now training them out to get actively involved in writing procedures and writing the risk assessments alongside. And hopefully I'll develop quite a strong supervisory team in a very short time.
So yeah. So the outcomes from this, obviously, you know, throughout the process, the whole team were involved in the setting up, the testing, the trialling, and working through this, as I say, from operators all the way through to team leaders and area managers have been supporting this process. And actually, they all see it as very much a simple, easily accessed system. It's very pictorial. I don't think the slides maybe showed some of the how pictorial the procedures are, but it's very easily understood for them. And wherever they are in the system, they can navigate quite easily because they are used to the buttons and things. They can navigate between the different procedures and risk assessments because all of the documents are very clearly linked. As I say, there's a lot of collaboration and involvement of all the team members. You can see there's a tremendous amount of work gone into this. As I say, Richard's been the pivotal point to pull it all together, but all of the team have been actively involved in supporting this and getting the system so that it works correctly. And it's very much owned by the whole team and the operatives. And at the end of the day, we have, you know, we believe a fully engaged and safe hygiene team. It's, you know, there's very few things now that ever come across where there's an issue within hygiene and safety because it's already been brought up, recognised and dealt with. Okay, thank you very much.
As you said at the beginning, Alison, the hygiene team has such a diverse range of risks to deal with, are different from the risks that you have with normal production because they're having to dismantle machinery, they're having to climb over things to clean them, they're using quite nasty chemicals to do the cleaning and all the rest of it.
Yeah, that's correct.
Sorry, yes, go ahead.
I said, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and all sorts of organisations are also very typically regarded as the kind of forgotten shift, aren't they? Particularly the night shift hygiene that come in to do deep cleaning. They're just left to get on with the job. There's not many senior managers around at that kind of stage, and all sorts of bad practices can very often slip into use just because there's nobody keeping an eye on what's going on. Were there any examples of any major problems when you started introducing this new system that you had to try and iron out?
I think it's ever evolving with this because obviously you've got the management system I've had in place has evolved over probably about 10 years, excluding the health and safety. When I brought this in, there's a lot of learning curve as to what's going to be implemented and what's going to be checked and how do you remember to check things. An example is using skin surveillance. We carry out skin surveillance on this site, and then the last time we did it, I think it was about July last year, and it was thought, hang on a minute, we need to be carrying out more, but how do we prompt it? So it's actually talking to the team leaders. They come up with ideas that actually putting in the skin surveillance sheets on with the cleaning schedules, which is a monthly rota, it will prompt the operatives and the team leaders to do the skin surveillance. It's there in front of them actually in the factory, and it's on a scheduled basis, so you're not going to miss it out again. The team leaders are so busy and the operatives trying to get the job done, then to try and get them to remember, oh, we need to do this, oh, we need to do that all the time. It was the team leader's suggestion to put this in with the system. So it identifies areas where we can improve communication, it identifies where we can actually make things easier for them to actually do the job and to incorporate health and safety.
Excellent. I wish I could have been in the room where you were putting together those flowcharts and trying to second guess everything that you do.
As I say, this is probably about version 23,
Oh,
I think.
it's
still changing now, so it's all ever evolving.
One of the key bits of that, if I could, Richard, as well, though, is that the auditing process is obviously crucial to that, because auditing is one of the ways you pick up on where there might still be gaps or where things need to be slightly adjusted. I think I spotted in one of the slides that it was the team leaders that are supposed to do so many audits a week. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, for each of the shifts, we've got an AM shift, a PM shift, and a night shift. All do 5 days a week, and we've got a weekend shift that's 3, and they're expected to carry out 3 audits within that shift rota.
Yeah.
So essentially, I'm getting 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12 audits done a week on different patterns as well. I mean, on the day shift, there's the staff outside permanently, so they will have different risks to the night shift. Obviously, it's too dark outside to do anything, so they won't do anything. So it's looking at different things.
That's excellent.
The next step is actually to plan in. As I said, now they're understanding the risk assessment side of things. The next step is to plan in a schedule of where they actually start reviewing certain procedures throughout the year, so they can take ownership. I've been doing this for a long time. I understand what to do and I know how to do it, but it's their turn now. It's their turn to take ownership of it. So hopefully this will actually make them even more proactive.
Good stuff. Well, thank you very much for that, Richard and Alison. As I say, it was a very worthy entry. It didn't quite make it to the top 3. I'll explain the judging process in a bit more detail later on, and I'll give you an idea of what's involved in that process. But as you can see, it was a very worthwhile entry and some very good ideas in there that I'm sure other people will be very keen to pick up on and share as well. I want to move on, though, because time's moving on, and I want to introduce Esther from AB Secura in Spain. AB Secura were the winners of the award last year, and they won for a very positive program for measuring the positive presence of safety, which is what Esther's going to talk about for us now. So over to you, Esther, please.
Well, hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to say thank you to Doug and also to IOSH to invite us to be here sharing the health and safety project that we share in the last Food and Drink Safety Awards. So, okay. Well, this presentation is divided mainly in 2 parts. First of all, I'm going to talk about our starting point, the different solutions that we have implemented. And after that, I'm going to talk about some of the results that we have got thank you to this project. So, well, if we look at our starting point, and if we look to this timeline, we can see that in terms of health and safety evolution, Azucarera or AB Sugar has 3 main phases. Firstly, as almost every company, we were focused in a reactive way. We work mainly focused on injuries and learning from failures. After that, in 2013, approximately, we moved, well, being aware about the dangerous environment in which we are operating and also the legal requirements, Azucarera decided to make a big effort in terms of health and safety system, risk assessment, training, etc. And in this second phase, I mean, while we are working in all of these things, we stop for a minute and we look at the graph that we can see below. And we observe 3 important things. Well, first of all, we observe that the result that we got in 2016 was similar to the result that we got in 2012, even when in 2012 we hadn't started with anything at all. Also, we realized that lost time injury rate, it's just a number. And with this, I mean that we are not getting all the information that we want to get. For example, lost time injury rate is not taking into account the different levels of harm. So, well, of course, the consequences also for the people and also for the company are very different when we are talking about a serious or a fatality. And the third thing that we realize when we look further in the root causes of our injuries is that in addition to unsafe conditions, We had other issues related to leadership, managers' involvement, awareness that we had to address. So during this, at the end of this second phase, we decided to launch 2 new programs. The first one was our Safety Talks program, and the other one was our second safety climate survey. And with these 2 new programs, we were looking for getting information about health and safety perception and behavioral choices. So, well, what did we get 1 year later? If we look at the results in our second safety culture survey, we can see that our employees allocate azucarera in a proactive level. But if we look deeper into the results, we also realize that 37% of our people allocate the company in a calculator, between the calculator and reactive level. And also when we had a look across the different dimensions that this survey analyzed, we discovered almost 1 point, or well, most than 1 point of difference between the trust in the health and safety systems that we had implemented and other dimensions, for example, as the involvement in the front line or the risk non-acceptance or the fair treatment when an injury happened. Well, on the other hand, we analyzed more than 1,000 safety talks, and we observed also 2 important things. All of our sites show a similar pattern in terms of unsafe behaviors. And the second important thing that we observe is that more than the 65% of our unsafe behaviors was concentrated just in 5 causes. Were concentrated in bad habits or overconfidence, lack of supervision, lack of concentration, and lack of task planning. So in conclusion, it was clear we should put the focus on people, not just in our facilities or in the unsafe conditions that we have in our place. So with all of this in mind, we gave a radical twist and we set 100% safe work as our goal. We really think that safety is not just the absence of accidents. We think that safety is the presence of the capability to act safely in the face of risk. And for us, at the end, act safe is removing and minimizing risk, but also increasing risk awareness and teaching and helping people to make the correct decision in each moment. So, well, the first thing that we did to advance toward this 100% safe work was to start to work in our health and safety index. And why key performance indicators? Well, because they are very helpful to monitor if we are advancing well. Secondly, because when we set a target and everybody is looking at this target, you are increasing awareness. And lastly, and overall, because we want to make sustainable our results. So this index is mainly focused on leading indicators. And I think that the innovative thing is that they are mainly focused also on people. So we set our main areas up and we evaluate each one in terms of management, leadership, and quality. So for example, when we are assessing contractors, we are measuring our performance in terms of the number of meetings that we are doing, but also we are measuring who are leading and who are attending to these regular meetings. Or when we are measuring the performance in the task procedures, for sure we are measuring the number of task procedures, because we need to know if we are advancing in the same way that we have planned, but also we are measuring who are creating and who are working on the implementation of these task procedures. Because at the end, this Health and Safety Global Index is working to achieve the total health and safety integration in the company. So it's very important for us that since the beginning, everybody, frontline managers, workforce, and everybody are totally involved in this project. So thanks to this Health and Safety Index, we are right now focused on the important health and safety areas in our company. We are getting a full and understandable overview of our performance. We are working in a positive approach because we are recognizing and rewarding those ones that are doing a bigger effort. And at the same time, we are also reducing the number of injuries. And for me, the most important thing is that we are also reducing the consequences from these injuries. So the second solution we are working on is our health and safety non-technical preventive skills. As I mentioned before, when I was talking about the root causes coming from injuries and the results we got in our safety survey and in the safety talks analysis, only a very insignificant percentage of unsafe behaviors were related to the lack of knowledge. Most of these unsafe behaviors were related to bad confidence and lack of managers' involvement. So going further of the technical training that we do, we realized that we should work on attitudes and conducts. So we started to work with the factory managers, setting up the non-technical skills that we think that are important in our business. And also we started to work with them in define each one. Because I think that was one of the most important things was to make clear our expectations in this program. So, well, after set up these skills and define each one, we create our assess methodology, and we assessed our level across 4 different groups: factory managers, line managers, workforce, and also the health and safety team. And well, we have created our plan, and last year we improve our communication abilities and also in our analysis abilities. And well, the last solutions that we have put in place is our new approach to health and safety events. What we are doing right now is categorize all the health and safety events. I mean injuries related to work, near misses, and risk notifications based on risk rating. And based on this risk level, we set up different management responses and actions. Why are we promoting risk rating? Well, first of all, to ensure that we are investigating and taking advantage of all significant events. I mean, real or potential, because we are working in a very dangerous environment. Secondly, because we want to manage efficiently our resources, avoiding detailed investigation of the trivial events. And lastly, to promote coherence and making clear to everybody what is critically important in our business. So, well, thank you to these 3 solutions, we have achieved some good outcomes. Well, we have achieved an average of 85%, sorry, of the actions completed in our action plan. We have also, working together, we have also achieved, or we have developed more than 500 task procedures. We have carried out more than 2,000 and 700 safety talks. We have received more than 3,600 risk notification, and I think here that the most important point is that 53% of them, of the important ones, have been done by workforce. But going beyond of the numbers, I think that above all, we are advancing based on a positive approach. We are promoting the technical knowledge, but also we are working hard in change or in correct attitudes and conducts. And we are working also to make clear what is important in our company. So that's all. Thank you.
One of the questions that we had in response to the earlier presentation from Mike Evans, I think, it was more a comment than a question. He said it was great to see health and safety management listening to the workforce and implementing their suggestions. And quite clearly that was one of the strong points in what we heard from Alison and Richard and what was happening at Kettleby Foods Hygiene team. But in your case, you seem to have taken that one step even further, and you've actually gone out and done some very detailed conversations with all the staff across the sites. And also you used that climate tool very well to actually try and figure things out as well. What do you think the key learnings were from the climate tool that were so important in changing the approach that you introduced?
Oh, I think that the key learnings has been because everybody tried to, well, for me, the main key learning is not just to look at the result as a number. It's the same with the last time injury rate or with every single KPI that you are measuring. I mean, sometimes when you are measuring, for example, the results in a safety climate survey, and you repeat this safety climate survey 3 years later, you want to compare the number. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's not it's not the right decision because you have a lot of information in the background of the survey. And for me, for example, after the number, we carry out different workshops in order to know why people think that they are not being fairly, in order to know the real reasons about this perception. And it was the same with the perception of lack of involvement of the managers. And when you ask directly to the people why do they have this idea in their mind, you can start to work on this.
That's excellent. Were there any other things you had to try and do to push safety forward and make it a much more integrated part of the processes in the factory as well, on the back of those findings?
Sorry, Doug, I didn't understand you.
Well, you identified quite clearly that some of the problems that in the climate survey were to do with the fact that people felt that management weren't engaging properly and people weren't being listened to. What sort of other changes did you have to make to try and make sure that that happened and that safety did become part of day-to-day production in the factory?
Okay, so the idea is like, well, when you know, well, because this is a big project, so
yeah, massive.
Yeah, so the idea is that we have a specific plan related to safety, to safety culture. So we have different tools, and we are measuring if we are advancing or not in terms of the things that they're asking to us. And so, for example, we have the promoters program in all of our sites. And
the promoters program, could you tell us a little bit more about the promoters program?
Yeah, for sure. Well, we have a specific program in which, well, we are trying to involve to everybody in the daily task. This is the thing that you are talking about. So that means that everybody has to be a health and safety promoter, at least during 2 weeks. And they have specific activities to carry out. So, and well, when we start this role as promoter, he has to share the results of their team in terms of the KPIs. They have, for example, to share the safety alerts of any injury, or they have also to carry out a review of the permit to work, of the lockout-tagout procedures. And at the end of these 2 weeks, they also have a meeting with their manager and with the factory manager in order to communicate the good things that we are doing and also the things that we need to improve. So thanks to this program, we are first of all facilitating the communication across everybody and across all the levels, and also they are assuming this kind of task as
Hello. I think we might just have lost Esther's audio there. Can you hear me, Esther?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so I think we just lost that last bit. So basically everybody takes a turn at being a safety promoter and takes that role on for a fortnight and then hands over with that review at the end. Is that the way you're saying it?
Yeah.
Yeah, an excellent idea for engaging people in the process, I think, and probably one of the main reasons why you've seen such an increase in the reports of potential hazards from amongst the workforce as well, I would have thought. The other thing which is striking about it was the focus on the need to actually train management in non-technical skills as well, and that's another theme which is beginning to develop in other areas as well. How important do you think it is that managers are good at communicating this kind of stuff to the people they're working with?
Well, we realize that is very important because, for example, we realize that everybody is receiving, training in communication, or we are training in other things, but it's not the same, for example, to communicate the learning lessons from an injury. So when I was talking about to define its competence or its non-technical skills, we were working in define these skills in terms of health and safety, first of all, and secondly, in terms of the tools and the channels of participation and these kind of things that we have in Azucarera.
That's excellent. Yeah, and just one last more technical question, really, which has just come in from one of the participants. The climate tool that you used when you were doing the 2 climate measurements, was that one that you developed in-house yourselves, or was that one that you used that you took from somewhere else to use?
Well, we used the NOSAC 50. Is the Nordic Safety Climate Survey or questionnaire.
Right.
But it's true that we hired an expert that after this, because this questionnaire is free for everybody. If you go to the NOSAC web, mm-hmm. you can find it. But it's true that the second part that we did, I mean the workshops, in order to get the most valuable information after that, was carried out with an expert.
Yeah, so that's NOSAC 50. That's NOSAQ 50, isn't it? That Nordic one is called. Yeah. The 50 is a clue that there are 50 questions in it, basically, which is a very useful questionnaire. And what was striking for the judges with the way you did those 2 measurements of the climate survey and the way you interrogated it quite cleverly to actually identify the areas that needed work and needed improvement, which is very good. So I think your presentation shows that it was a very worthwhile winner of last year's awards, and thank you for that, Esther. I want a little bit about the awards this year themselves. The awards, as I say, have been running for over 10 years now, and they're sponsored by the IOSH Food and Drink Industries Group. We're very grateful to IOSH for the sponsorship they give to the awards. But the awards aren't run just on behalf of IOSH. The IOSH Food and Drink Industry Group is a member of the Food and Drink Manufacturing Forum in the UK, which brings together representatives from the main trade associations in the industry, the main trade unions in the industry, and the Health and Safety Executive. And in fact, meetings are chaired by the Health and Safety Executive. And it's through that forum that the industry has developed its common strategy for trying to improve health and safety standards in the industry. And the sponsorship of the awards is very much a part of the IOSH Food and Drink Industries Group's support towards that common strategy and trying to achieve those goals. So it's a very important part of that process. It feeds into the annual Health and Safety Conference, which is held in October in this country as well. This year will be taking place October the 6th and 7th at Forest Pines Hotel near Scunthorpe in the northeast of the country. You can find more details about that and about the awards themselves at the web address which is shown on this particular slide at the moment. And the awards are open to anybody who works in the food and drink manufacturing industry anywhere in the world. We're very pleased, in fact, that the winner last year was from Spain. Esther's entry from Spain was a very good entry and it was a very interesting one to see. But the runner-up, one of the runners-up last year as well was a global entry from a major tea and coffee manufacturing company, Finley's, James Finley's company, and in fact they were actually the winners the year before for a global health safety improvement performance that they launched as well, which truly was worldwide. So we're very much international in our approach. We want to learn from anybody and everybody in the industry if we can, but that doesn't mean we're only interested in the big entries, the ones like Esther's one, which was a major change in the culture of the organization. It was very interesting and very useful to see, but quite often in the past, some of the entries that have won have actually been much more small scale than that. They've been simple changes to specific bits of machinery or equipment, or specific changes to specific tasks in the workplace as a way of improving health and safety in that particular way. They've come from managers, from health and safety specialists in the industry, from ergonomists, from engineers particularly, from workers' health and safety reps, and from project teams who were set up in particular workplaces to take on those kind of things. As I say, some were small, some were big, but overall they won because they were able to demonstrate that they'd made a significant improvement to the health and safety performance in that particular workplace by the steps that they took. If you want to enter for this year's awards, I'll tell you a bit more about what you could win if you're lucky in the next slide. But if you want to enter for it, the process is very simple. You go back to that website that we showed you the address for earlier. You download the entry form, fill in the entry form, make sure it's signed by a senior manager or director. If there are any attachments you want to include to actually explain a bit more clearly what it was that you did and why it worked, then obviously make sure you attach those attachments. And the closing date for getting entries in for this year's awards is the 6th of July, 2020. When it comes to filling in the award, the form, just a plea from the judges, it's very important that you do answer all the questions that are on the form. The forms are fairly straightforward and fairly simple one to fill in, but it is important that you do answer all the questions. That doesn't mean we need to see very detailed answers to every question, but we do need to see some answer that suggests that some thought has been given to it. For example, one of the obvious questions we ask is whether or not there was any economic benefit from the process that you introduced, whether there was any demonstrable costs or savings. That doesn't mean we need to see a sort of balance sheet with everything laid out in columns and very precise figures, but it does mean we need to see some evidence that you have actually looked at the costs and the savings that have been achieved by the project that you were actually working on. It's also very important that you do add things like videos, photos, or other attachments to show you what you mean, because the judges themselves obviously don't work in your industry and don't work in your workplace, so they may not be as familiar as you are with the processes that you're talking about. The judging process itself takes place just towards the end of the year, after the entries have all come in. There are 4 judges elected or appointed through the Food and Drink Manufacturing Forum. There's a representative from IOSH itself, there's a representative from the Health and Safety Executive, a representative from one of the trade associations on the forum, and a representative from the trade unions of the forum. And essentially all they look at is the evidence that's presented in each entry and try and ask 4 very simple questions. Did it tackle the issue in a way that was innovative for that particular workplace? Was there clear evidence of why it was needed? Was there a clear explanation of how it worked? And also, what was the evidence that it actually had a positive impact in the workplace as well? And over the years that we've been doing the judging, we found that it helps to actually separate out the ones that all look like they're very good entries into the ultimate winners by giving a bit of extra weight to those entries that demonstrate there were other business benefits in addition to the health or safety improvement that they were trying to achieve in that particular case, and also to entries which show evidence of either effective leadership or very good employee engagement. And I think you can see that in both the presentations we've seen this morning, there was evidence of good employee engagement and leadership in each of those entries as well. You can get a flavour for what the previous winners have done and find out more about the entry process by going back to the IOSH Food and Drink Group's website. And again, the link at the bottom of this particular slide will take you to a page where you can actually see the presentations from previous winners, not just for last year, but for a couple of years going back from that. The way that the process works is that everybody who takes part in everybody who enters is considered. Entry is free, process is very straightforward. If you are lucky enough to be either the winner or one of the two runners up, you will receive a small cash prize, not particularly generous one, as to be said. I think that the top prize is only £750 at the moment, and a trophy, of course, as well. And more importantly, you'll also be invited to have a free place at the Food and Drink National Conference in October, where you'll be invited to attend the dinner at their conference and receive the award at the dinner. And then on the second day of the conference, you'll be given an opportunity to have 10 minutes to give a presentation to the conference so you can share what you did with your peers at the conference. So as I say, it's a free process. There are some genuine prizes at the end of it, but there's other reasons why it's worth thinking about entering for the process as well, other than just the prizes and the value that that brings. Just taking time to complete the entry form, sitting the guys down who did the project together and getting the evidence from them and pulling it all together is a great way to reflect on what you have achieved and to recognize what they've actually added to the process. And if you are lucky enough to win, then the feedback from those organizations that have won, and perhaps one of the questions I could have asked Esther if we had more time, is quite overwhelming. Apart from the fact that you do get recognition from your peers in the industry, and it's nice to be praised for something you've done, the main benefits inside the workplace themselves are quite intangible ones that are difficult to measure but are very important. There are things like health and safety being better owned by the people themselves. People are very proud of the awards when they win them and are very keen to display them. It's definitely led in most workplaces to much improved morale because it shows that people are taking health and safety seriously where they work. And it's definitely been improvements to the health and safety culture on top of the ones that might have been implemented on the way to winning that award in the first place. And those benefits actually last several years after the awards have been won. We've actually gone back and talked to some winners of the awards from 2 or 3 years ago, and they're still getting that buzz from the awards, which has resulted in improvements to health and safety performance. So it's very well worth considering entering for the process. It's very straightforward. Entry is free, but winning has actually got benefits that is very difficult to put a price on and very worth doing. So thank you very much for listening to us. I'm not sure if we've got any further questions, Ben, that we might want to raise or deal with from people who've been listening in. If not, then I'm quite happy to wind up at that point and say thank you, and please get your entries in for this year's awards before the 6th of July.